They called it a home. The sign on the road said New Bethany Home for Boys. It was a white house on a green hill. From a distance, it looked quiet. It looked safe. I remember the day my father's car pulled away. I stood on the gravel drive and watched it disappear. I was a boy. They said I was broken. They said this place would fix me. I did not know what that meant. I only knew the house was big and my father was gone. The front door was heavy. It made a deep sound when it closed behind me. That sound was the beginning. My hands are not smooth. They have small, pale scars that map my time there. My back is the same, a landscape of old pains that ache when the weather turns cold. I did not speak of New Bethany for many years. The story was a stone in my throat. I kept it down. I kept it silent. Now, I must speak. I speak because the Supreme Court is talking about places like that one. They are using words like rights and faith. I need to use my own words. Words like fear. Words like pain. The memory is too big to hold inside one body forever. It needs air. Our days were built on rules. The rules were everything. They were read to us every morning after prayers. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not look another boy in the eyes for too long. Do not whisper after the lights are out. Do not touch. Do not linger. Walk with your hands behind your back. Keep your head down. The list was long. It was a cage made of words. We lived inside it. To follow the rules was to be invisible. To be invisible was to be safe for a little while. A bell governed our movements. It was a harsh, brassy sound that cut through the air. 1 ring for morning prayers, 2 rings for meals, 3 sharp rings meant you were being summoned, your name would be called, and you would have to walk to the front of the room. The bell could stop your heart. It stopped conversations. It stopped thoughts. All you could hear was that ringing and the blood pounding in your ears. You learned to move without thinking when the bell rang. You just went. Hesitation was a sin. It meant you had something to hide. Isolation was a tool. We worked alone in the gardens. We ate at tables with spaces between us. We were not allowed to form friendships. A shared glance could be seen as a conspiracy. A quiet word could be seen as a plot. They wanted us to be alone, together. In that loneliness, they believed we would turn to God, or to them, the men who spoke for God. They wanted to be the only voices in our heads, to own our thoughts, to scrub them clean of whatever they decided was wrong with us. Punishment had its own rituals. For breaking the rules, there was the quiet room. It was at the far end of the west wing. It was a closet, really. There was no window. There was only a thin mattress on the floor, a bucket in the corner. The door had 3 locks on the outside. When they put you in there, the darkness was complete. You could not see your own hand in front of your face. The silence was so deep it buzzed in your ears. You would listen for footsteps in the hall, for any sign of the world outside. Sometimes days would pass. You lost track. You would scratch marks on the wall just to feel something. They had a machine, kept in a locked office. They called it a tool for conversion, a way to rewire the brain. I remember they brought me into that room once. The machine was a metal box, dials, wires. It had a small red light that blinked on and off, on and off. A slow, steady pulse. They sat me in a hard wooden chair. They told me this would not hurt. It would only help. They said it was a kind of prayer, a modern way to speak to the sin inside me. They attached cold metal clips to my temples and my fingers. The shock was not like they said. It was not a prayer. It was a white-hot lightning strike inside my skull. It made my whole body jump, a marionette with its strings cut. My teeth slammed together. A scream tore out of my throat, but it felt like someone else's scream. They would ask questions while they did it. They would show me pictures. They wanted me to associate the pain with the parts of myself they wanted to destroy. It did not destroy anything. It just burned. It burned a new kind of fear into my mind, a fear of electricity, of small blinking lights. Beatings were common. They used a thick leather strap. They called it the rod of correction. They said the Bible gave them the right. The worst part was not always the physical pain. It was the silence. The house was full of a heavy, watchful silence. It settled in the corners of the rooms. It hung in the air between us. We were taught that our own thoughts were dangerous. Our feelings were evidence of sin. So we learned to be silent inside too. We built walls in our own minds. I stopped remembering things from before. My mother's face became blurry. The sound of my own laughter became a distant echo. I was becoming a ghost in my own life, and that was the point. They used faith as their weapon. They read from the Bible every day, but they only read the parts about wrath and punishment. They told us God was a stern father who demanded perfect obedience. Their God was always watching, always judging. He saw every thought, every flicker of defiance in our eyes. Their God was on their side. Love was a word they used, but it felt thin and cold. It meant obedience. It meant surrender. To love God was to hate the parts of yourself that they had named as unholy. The house never felt holy. It felt haunted by a cold and angry spirit. We lost ourselves in that place. A boy's name was just a word they called before a punishment. We learned to see ourselves through their eyes, broken, sinful, in need of fixing. My own name started to feel strange in my mouth. I forgot what it was like to just be, to run in a field, to tell a joke, to feel happy for no reason. Every feeling was suspect. Every impulse was a potential sin. We became experts at hiding, not just from them, but from ourselves. The person I was before New Bethany was buried deep, and I was not sure I could ever dig him out again. The fear was constant, a low hum beneath everything. The fear of being noticed, the fear of the bell, the fear of the quiet room, the fear of the night. You would pray, but not to their God. You would pray for the sun to come up, for the night to pass without the sound of your door opening. The fear lived in your stomach. It never went away, not even after you left. There were small moments of grace. They were rare, like finding a wildflower in a field of stones. A kitchen worker, an old woman who never spoke, once slipped an apple into my pocket as I washed dishes. Its weight and smoothness felt like a miracle. I ate it in secret, in the dark, and the taste was the sweetest thing I had ever known. Another time, an older boy taught me how to tie a fisherman's knot. He showed me with quick, silent movements of his hands. It was a secret not in their books. One boy, whose name I have forgotten, used to hum, a low, steady sound when he thought no one was listening. I once saw him draw a tiny bird in the dust of a windowsill. He wiped it away when he heard footsteps. These were our small rebellions: an apple, a knot, a humming sound, a bird made of dust, tiny lights in a vast and crushing darkness. Eventually, the world came to New Bethany. Police cars came up the long gravel drive. Men and women with notebooks and cameras walked through the halls. They opened the quiet room. They found the machine in the office. They took pictures. They asked us questions in soft voices. For a brief moment, it felt like the world was finally seeing the truth. The home was raided. The church that ran it was called a cult. It felt like a judgment. But the men who ran the place were not punished. The grand jury reports were filed away. The house was emptied, but the harm was not. I tell you this because the fight is not over. Today is November 16th, 2025. I read about court cases in Colorado and legal settlements in Virginia that weaken the laws meant to stop this. They are trying to make it legal again, to bring back the quiet rooms, the blinking red lights, under the cover of religious freedom. They are arguing over words on paper, but I am telling you about the scars on my skin. The house may be gone, but the idea of the house is not. It waits for new boys. It waits for new rules and new believers to enforce them. The house remembers. The scars remember. And what forgets the least is the quiet that sits after the door closes.